Hey everyone, welcome back to Devirai Technologies. I'll be keeping a pause on our WhatsApp chat GPT series because I have been getting so many queries on the bot authentication. And in this video and in coming videos, we'll be completing this series. We'll be making use of web chat channel and implement single tenant, multi tenant, and user assigned managed identity authentications as well as on the Microsoft Teams channel as well will perform the same steps. So let's get started. I'll be taking the sample from the bot framework samples repository and I'll pick up bot authentication sample. I'll copy it and put it at my working directory. Then open the bot. Also, let me open up the documentation that we'll be following throughout this implementation. We'll be following this documentation as it is. Even they mention to pick up the sample, and this is the sample that we have picked up. We are not working with authentication for Microsoft Graph in this video. We'll be only authenticating with the Azure Entra ID. You can also say Microsoft Entra ID. So first thing first, create the resource. I'll search for Azure bot. So I'll be naming this as bot single tenant, that is short form ST, auth bot dev. So let's put it into resource group RG auth bot dev. Okay. I'll make use of free plan and here we'll choose the single tenant and I'll create the Microsoft App ID along with the Azure bot service. By the time this is getting completed, let's open up our Visual Studio project. And this is a bot project that we'll be making use of. And it requires app type, app ID, app password, tenant ID, as well as connection name. Let's go to the main dialog, what all things it has. So at the start of the dialog, it is going to prompt me for the login. Basically, it will show me a login card, Auth card, with a sign in option on that. Once I logged in, it will basically redirect me onto the browser. If I'm testing it on some web chat interface or if I'm testing it on emulator, then it will allow me to log in. After it completes login, it will send back the token to my bot, which I can view on the chat window. Okay, so that is all the steps that it does. If you're implementing this on your existing bot, so what are the things that you need to add to your existing bot? So let me get started with the adapter with error handler. So you want to add this service, bot framework authentication. That's the service you need to add. That's the first step. Second step, In your dialog class, you need to add OAuth prompt dialog, this one, with the connection details. And the connection name, you'll get it from the configuration. Okay. So whenever you need login, you just call the OAuth prompt, and immediately after calling OAuth prompt dialog, you get the token response. You can use this at any place in your dialogues, in any of your sub dialogues. It's up to you. So whenever you need authentication for certain services in your project implementation, just make a call to OAuth prompt, and then in the next step, just get the token response. And with that token, you can just make a graph API call or do something else. Okay. So this is required for the dialog class. One more thing, it extends, main dialog extends the logout dialog. If at all you're implementing the logout functionality as well. So if user types logout, then it is going to interrupt your dialog flow and it will come up here and it will check if the text is logout. Then it will just clear all the then it will just clear all your conversation, sign out the user and everything. Okay. So these two are part of the dialogues implementation. Coming to authbot, this you need to add. This you need to add for the web chat authentication. We are not talking about Teams authentication yet. We'll implement that functionality later, but this is specifically for the web chat. So this is required to be added in your bot bot class file on token response. Okay. Else it won't work. It won't work. When you get the token response event, you'll not be able to get the token back after you log in. So this is mandatory. You need to add. So these are the only steps that are required. And apart from that, I think you need to add bot framework authentication for all the Microsoft bot framework samples. This is already there. So if it is not there, just add it in your startup.cs file or program.cs file. Okay. So yeah, that's all here. Now let's continue ahead. My um, my single tenant bot is deployed. Let's copy the bot type. We'll also understand various errors that the developers get during their implementation for the web chat authentication. We'll see to that and how you can overcome and debug that. So let's copy the single tenant. If you're testing the authentication in your local machine, make sure you keep all these settings, as well as when you're testing on emulator. Even on emulator, you need to add app ID and app password. Okay, that's the tenant ID. Okay, now let's generate the password. And connection name. Connection name, I'll tell you how we can get that. Okay, all good. Now coming back to our documentation, we have successfully created our Azure bot service. In this example, they have used managed identity, but we have used single tenant. What else we have? This we have configured single tenant, app ID, app password, and tenant ID. This we have configured. This option is only required if you're creating a managed identity bot service. We have implemented these steps. getting the tenant ID, generating the new password, and now we'll be implementing the OAuth connection. Okay. So in this documentation, what they have done, they have created Azure bot service as a separate resource, but and they are using app registration, separate app registration for the authentication. You can do this same thing in a single application, the app registration for the Azure bot service, or you can create a new app registration and do these steps. Okay. So what we'll be doing for the simplicity purpose, we'll be doing in the same app registration. Or better, let's follow the documentation that will be making more sense. So I think let's follow the documentation as is. Okay. So this was our bot service, and let's go to Entra ID, go to app registration, new registration, and this is the place we are going to add ST. Okay. This will be a single tenant. We'll get the OAuth URL from here. If you're a normal user or a developer, a normal organization, then you can choose this one as the OAuth redirect URL. If you're someone part of Europe, United States, India, and Azure government, then you can choose the other ones. Okay. So I'll be making use of this one. This will be a web and paste the redirect URL. Okay. All good. Here is your redirect URL. If you're implementing this in your existing app registration, you'll need to come here, add a platform, add the web, and then enter this redirect URL. Okay. Also, we are going to need this client secret. We'll create in a second. Before that, let's configure the API permissions. How you can configure? Just click on add permission, Microsoft Graph, delegated. So I'll just add these three permissions as of now. Okay. Well, in the documentation, they have many permission, mail.read, mail.send. Since we are not interacting with the Microsoft Graph API, so I'll not add any of them. Okay. So that's all. You can also grant admin consent for your organization as an admin so that when user logs in for the first time, they don't have to give the consent. But if you don't want to give, that's fine, it will still work. But when user is logging in for the first time, they will be giving the consent. Okay. So now coming back to configuration, we'll add the OAuth connection settings. Let's name this as I'm just naming this as OAuth connection. Service provider, I'll be choosing Azure Active Directory version 2. Client ID will be the one that is this one. Client secret, let's go ahead and generate it. Token exchange URL, leave it blank. Tenant ID, let's copy it from here. And keep the same scopes that you have kept here. in the API permission. Make sure you keep the same scopes. Well, user.read was not required, but still I have added it. Maybe in the future I'll call the graph API to retrieve the user details. Once this is done, save the connection. Once the connection is created, you'll see this Auth connection added up here. Open it and test the connection. If you're able to receive the token, well and good. You see, since I'm logging in for the first time, it is asking me for the consent. I'm also an admin, so it is asking me this checkbox. Since I'm an admin, I can consent on behalf of my whole organization. But I'll not do that. So let's give the permission, accept. Okay. So I have the token. That means my connection was successful. So I'll copy the token and let's see what all details it has. So I'll go to jwt.io. And here you can see all the details it has inside the token. It has my name. It has my object ID. It has all the permission that I have granted. It has the app ID. And what else it has? It has the email address as well. And I guess it will have the token expiry as well somewhere. Maybe out of this. Yeah, this one. So it has the basic details that are needed for the logging purpose so that bot can identify who is the user. Okay. So this all good. So what I'll do, I'll copy the connection name and paste it here. That is all is required for testing this out. Let's run this. Open the bot framework emulator. I'm not showing you the documentation because we have already completed all of these steps. These all we have just completed. We also tested our connection, prepare the bot code. We have also entered all these settings. This is not required. And now we are at this step, test the bot using the emulator. Okay, let's see. Copy the tenant as app ID, copy the app password and connect. So you might be getting this error if it is a single tenant resource. And if you click on this error, you'll see the actual error details. The bot's Microsoft App ID or Microsoft App password is incorrect. I have researched this a lot why this is happening, and I found out that I'll show you this thing here. Just open this documentation. Okay. So here it will show you how you can configure your emulator for the authentication. So first thing first, go to settings and just check mark this bypass ngrok for local addresses. And second is enable user sign-in verification code. This one. Save it. You can also do it for the authentication tokens. That is for the 1.0 authentication tokens. So we'll not make use of that. And this all fine. When you come back down, right? So here you'll see when the supported account type is set to single tenant, if you use personal subscription instead of Microsoft account, the emulator would issue the error bots Microsoft app ID or app password is incorrect. I have no idea what does they mean by personal subscription or Microsoft account. I believe the personal subscription will be if you created a personal Microsoft account and you created a personal subscription, right? I think it is pointing to that. But my account is a work or business school account. So it's a Microsoft account. I'm not sure why this is happening, but this is the place where it shows the something. I have researched online, I could not find anything with regards to this. Okay. So how do we test that? We'll see that. I'll show you. Since we configured this, let's come back here, restart the conversation, nothing. It's still the same. Okay. Now, now let's configure the ngrok. Let's see if we are able to solve this by ngrok. Copy the ngrok URL, go to your bot service, paste the URL /API/messages. Apply. Copy this messaging endpoint. Open bot, paste the URL as well as app ID and app password. I'm testing this for the first time. I'm not sure whether this will be successful because I'm thinking that it is similar to Teams bot. I've worked a lot of time with Teams bot authentication. Something is the bot is remote, but the service URL is localhost. Without tunneling software, you'll not receive replies. Still, I'm getting the same response. So I'm assuming that we cannot test single tenant bots on bot framework emulator. I'm thinking that, okay, still it doesn't work. Fine, but I have a way. Since we configured ngrok, right? So what we can do now, instead of testing on emulator, let's test it on web chat. This is the place. There you see 200 OK. So it works on the test in web chat, but it doesn't work on the emulator for the single tenant bots. Okay. So let's say something. Sign in. It has opened the web portal. I'll copy the validation code. I'll come back here, enter the validation code. You are now logged in. View the token. There we have the token. Perfect, right? So this is the best way you can test your single tenant bots using ngrok on the Azure web chat. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll just go to back to JWTIO and I'll show you all these details. See? Perfect, right? Now, all right. So that is all in this video. See you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.